Hey, I'm Protag, the creative director and producer of Sonic Riders Tournament Edition. It's finally here, the release of 1.4. It's been rather long awaited, hasn't it? But that made getting to this point all the more satisfying. So let's waste no further time and get right into it.
For those of you who remember Netplay Cup 14 we hosted back in November of 2020, many of Metal City's textures were revamped by Final Phoenix Switch. It was a rather unique Mute City-inspired makeover, based on the Mario Kart 8 design. These textures were initially not made public because they were meant to be an exclusive for that specific tournament series. But as of now, the stage has been fully completed in HD. We got remade floor tiles, a gradient sky, and even the cars look reminiscent of the Blue Falcon. You can now get a more techno look from one of the most raced stages in the game. This will be available in both the main texture pack as well as Switch's Game Banana page, with both single and multiplayer textures once 1.4 is released. Speaking of FPS, allow me to pass the mic.
Greetings everyone, my name is Final Phoenix Switch and I'm SRT's resident texture artist. And I'll be covering up what I've been working on in this massive upgrade to the texture pack. So let's get into it. Now besides the Metal City area that I did help work on, we also redesigned the digital dimension, which we like to call the Chao Garden dimension. We took major inspiration from Sonic Adventure 2 to give digital dimension the most ambitious makeover texturing can provide. The Dark Garden overlays the Hellish area, then we have the Hero Garden over the Heaven section, and finally the lobby over the Black Tunnel areas. First up is the Dark Garden, which has a sky that is altered to dark purple going along with the red water as a callback to the blood pools. In addition, the statues also look a bit like the Dark Chao from SA2 and a nice redesign with an appropriate label on the gate at the end. Now in the Heaven area, the first thing you see are the angel statues, which have similar color aspects from the Hero Chao, along with a remade version of the Hero Garden logo. We also brought the marble design look and applied it to the floor and buildings on the sides. Of course, we also wanted to bring the grass look on some way by applying it to the sides. If you look closely at the ground rails, the lights look very similar to the rails in SA2. Finally, the last area here is the purple light/orange look due to being based on the lobby area before you enter any of the gardens in SA2. We also redesigned the power gates to put a mixed color for both gardens along with a galaxy look on the rails. Part of these textures will also affect Babylon Guardian as well. All in all, it's definitely going to be one of my finest works, and I have a lot of fun blueprinting it with the team. I also want to take this opportunity to make a special announcement. This is something you may have heard about a while back, but finally I'm opening up a server I've been working on for a while now, and I call it the Dolphin Texture Card. The server is made not only for Riders texture artists, but all Dolphin texture artists who work on GameCube and Wii games of other kinds, in order to show off their designs to everyone. Now the release date of the server is today, so once the direct ends, there will be a public link posted in the Sonic Riders competitive server and by yours truly on my About Me bio. I also like to cap this off by thanking Protag and the rest of the SRT team for giving me this opportunity. I'm grateful for what the community has given me over my stay and enjoyed making textures for all of you to experience. Hoping to see it go even further and see you guys just enjoy the textures I make. This was Final Phoenix Switch over and out.
Future patches will be taking advantage of a time clock feature where certain details of the mod may change depending on what time of year you play it on. The groundwork for this feature is actually already present. 1.4 tracks the user's local system time through Dolphin. Alas, there are many possible applications for this feature, and we naturally plan on taking advantage of it in a number of ways. The first implementation being worked on is a winterized version of all the game's stages. Should you load up a future patch around the holiday season, the game's textures will automatically be altered. What you're seeing now is a proof of concept, and I believe it to be a very good one at that. The project is a commission that's being worked on by some of the most reputable community members. The rest of the stages will be receiving similar winter-themed makeovers. I sought these individuals out specifically because of their unique take and expertise on texture design. Needless to say, we're in great hands, so stay tuned. great sound design is critical in a Sonic game to successfully convey the feeling of breakneck speed. As we'll see later, additions made to the mod's sound were a huge focus for this patch. In the meantime, there have been several quality of life additions made related to the sound effects. The effects have been added related to dying, picking up a magnet, getting hit by a tornado, and landing a 10+ trick combo. Additionally, you are now freely able to toggle between English and Japanese voice actors. Some other miscellaneous changes: you can actually hit the water tank power objects in Night Chase's multiplayer version. Before, it was nearly impossible. So thanks, Sega. Character boost trails transform into a different color as they near the end of their duration. This is a really good tool for newcomers, indicating when they should be ready to boost chain or go in for the attack. You can turn yourself into a CPU at any time by pressing down on the D-pad. While in CPU mode, you'll lose complete control of your character until you press down on the D-pad again. Your exhaust trail will disappear to show that you're a computer. Use this new tool how you will, but personally, the team encourages you to stunt on people. Descriptions for each gear and stage have now been updated to be more relevant to the mod. Stages now indicate their status as either a neutral or counter pick on the selection screen. You can also see what stage is currently picked in the character selection screen. Lastly, gear descriptions are more, well, descriptive. The in-game shop also functions as a convenient way to reference each gear's flavor text and stats. Check it out, you might find something interesting. Characters belonging to the early boosting archetype in 1.3 were an unfortunate example of an interesting idea that never really found its footing. They had an odd style of gameplay centering around staying at level 1 and 2, but this itself was counterintuitive from a design standpoint. Gears performed their best at level 3, but playing an early booster would actively punish you for reaching it. That's why we have decided to replace the early boosters with a brand new archetype, currently going under the moniker of combat characters. Combat characters also enjoy the consistent boost duration across the early levels, but they also gain a boost chain modifier, something useful at all levels, and a bonus to both their attack stun and range upon reaching level 3. Tails, Knuckles, and Ulala are the designated combat characters in this newest patch. I can assure you, they're the whole package, so look forward to experimenting with a new aggressive form of play. Let's move on to some more character changes.
Ha! Hazard schmazard!
We switched around some types. Notably, Amy forgoes speed in favor of power. To accommodate this change, she'll be pulling out her hammer whenever something's in her way. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Other than that, she remains the same, keeping her drift archetype. This is something that everyone's been waiting for. Let's talk about the new guy.
I was created for the sole purpose of destroying you. But I can never seem to defeat you. That was the past. Now you're nothing but a speck of dust to me.
E10B from Sonic Freeriders joins the roster as a brand new character in Sonic Riders Tournament Edition. In the events of Sonic Freeriders, E10B reveals his true identity as the disguised form of Metal Sonic. In the grander Sonic timeline, Tournament Edition takes place after the events of Freeriders. After successfully collecting and copying all of the other racers' data, Metal Sonic is back at it again in his E10B form, and he's here to take back revenge on those who stole victory from him. As you can see, he feels a little less self-conscious and standing out. Those of you with an attention for detail will notice his iconic, eerie glowing eyes peering out from beneath his metallic casing. Naturally, E10B is a speed character with the drift archetype, which means he gains additional stats related to drifting. He also comes complete with a complete character UI, boost trail, and even custom voice lines. We really wanted to make it feel as though we truly added a new character to the game, and we did our best to make it work within the current limitations. This change doubles as a balance decision, in response to 1.3 having two power-type characters which saw very limited use compared to their counterparts. It's our hope that this alteration will help make the roster archetype spread more even, Unfortunately, to make room for E10B's character slot, E10R will have to be removed. Well, at least not forever. E10R will be returning as an X-Load for the upcoming hotfix, post 1.4 launch. This is a newly implemented feature that will pave the way for exciting future additions to the game's aesthetics. Simply hold X when selecting an appropriate gear and you will be able to swap the model's skins, or even entire characters. In fact, I've heard rumblings that 1.4 features a character that can already be X-Loaded. But of course, it's just a rumor. By the way, the feature is dubbed X-Load with an EX, as it's named after the person responsible for coding it. In fact, the individual in question would like to speak about an improvement coming to this patch. Please allow me to pass the mic over to him.
Hey, what's going on guys? Exertal here, the lead programmer for SRT 1.4. I wanted to cover one of the more technical changes in the patch, the refinement of the slipstream mechanic. Slipstream came into existence in SRT 1.3. Originally coded by Air King Neo, it was a sweeping system change that allowed the player in second place to have a better chance at catching up and having a fighting chance in the match. This was done by giving the player behind a small speed boost if they were within a decent range of the player in first place. In earlier versions of the mod, players could only catch up by either having faster type shortcuts than their opponent, having better ring collection, or executing advanced techniques to gain more leverage over the opponent, resulting in the player behind slowly catching up. Most of the time, these factors weren't enough, which is why Slipstream was introduced. The Slipstream in SRT 1.3 was a step in the right direction, but we thought it could be even better, so we recoded it to fix up some of its issues. One of them being was that it was very inconsistent throughout all the game stages. On some stages the Slipstream worked as intended, and on others it's almost as if the mechanic never existed in the first place. With it being recoded in SRT 1.4, that consistency issue has mostly faded away, and Slipstream is usually present everywhere it should be. One of the big additions to this new version of Slipstream is a cone-shaped radius that expands outwards from the back of the leading player. This means that the closer you get to the player in front, the more you'd have to be positioned exactly right behind them, making you more susceptible to tornadoes. In addition, this should make it easier for the leading player to fend off the player behind trying to abuse the Slipstream. Another addition that will mostly take effect in non-tournament settings is the ability to stack Slipstream. This feature caps out at being able to Slipstream off of 4 players total, each new stack giving you a lesser speed bonus until it finally caps out. This should make it more exhilarating and fun to be in 3rd or 4th place, for example, and having the rest of the players grouped up right ahead of you, giving you all that juicy bonus speed. Well, that's it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed the patch as much as we enjoyed working on it. Thanks for having me.
And he makes a nice landing!
The original writers had many interesting ideas that weren't quite fleshed out. One of those ideas being character weight. In the original game, it only affects nudging at the start line and the monkey seesaw platforms in Sega Carnival. In addition, the only differences in weight were lightboard, default, heavy bike, and oddly enough, the ball and chain item. Historically, Sonic Riders Tournament Edition has pushed the game's original design philosophies. The new definition of the weight stat is no such exception. It now affects how much characters can be nudged at the start line, how fast characters fall naturally and when using the fast fall feature, more on that later, how long it takes to get max jump charge, how much speed you gain while traveling downhill, how much speed you lose while traveling uphill, how much speed you lose while traveling off-road, and how much air you lose when getting attacked. The addition of weight accomplishes many things, though a big motivator was game feel. I always found it strange that traveling uphill decreased your speed and going downhill didn't. It probably had something to do with the game being rushed, but with this simple change, the extreme gears feel like they have a real sense of weight to them. This is something that fans of the classic series and the Sonic Adventure games would definitely appreciate. That also leads into how the characters feel more varied from one another. SRTE version 1.3 was a step in the right direction with character archetypes. However, the only thing separating a character within their own archetype was their shortcut type. Otherwise, they were pretty much exactly the same. But now, each individual character and extreme gear feels unique. And this was achieved without completely breaking competitive viability nor integrity. Since this stat is now much more important, its approximate value will be displayed on the CSS. It replaces the cornering stat, which didn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. Needless to say, weight has inarguably added to the game's depth. players will need to take into account the weight of their character gear combo and calculate the risks and rewards associated with it. It will require both players to think about their build before heading into the track, while at the same time allowing those who master its effects to win crucial interactions in the match based off of split-second decisions. The team believes that this and many of the other new creative mechanics implemented in the patch of 1.4 have the potential to elevate the game to new heights never before imagined. One of the most interesting aspects of Sonic Riders is definitely the trick system. Spacing your jump charge before the ramp, timing the release, and then going ham on the analog stick. Fewer things are more satisfying, but there's always room for improvement. And that's where the reinvented S-Rank trick comes in. They now grant you 300 speed when performed. This includes manuals, half-pipes, and even the web on Green Cave. The first thing you'll notice is the sense of speed being incredible, especially when you boost chain using a gear like High Booster. It kinda reminds me of that iconic multi-loop in Chemical Plant Zone. Many gears find it useful to perform a boost chain out of an X-Rank due to the 200 speed granted for landing one. Sadly, at later levels or on high boosting gears altogether, this isn't an option. The new speed granted by an S-Rank facilitates these gears better. It also encourages a little more trick variety. Instead of always doing the same old X-Rank combination for 90% of ramps, the player gains a new, risk-latent option that trades the air of an X-Rank in return for a massive burst of speed, which could net you some combat applications. Though it is important to mention S-Rank's other drawback. It still requires an ample amount of charge, so missing your charge when you originally aimed to do an X-Rank won't be an option, since a no-charge jump on most ramps will usually net you up to an A+. It's true that on certain ramps you can get an S+ with no charge, however the normal S is usually still not possible. Despite being a lower rank trick, S-Ranks take longer to perform than the S+. So that means in the original game, not only did they give you less air and speed, but they were also completely obsolete to the S+. I find this very interesting because, as we all know, Sonic Riders was a rushed 2006 multi-platform title. It's almost as though the S-Rank trick was designed to have some sort of ulterior benefit, but that's just my headcanon. Oh, that reminds me. Ring gears can also perform S-Ranks. Since they obviously do not possess the speed for air trade as they cannot gain air, they simply pay rings to perform the S-Rank instead. This will take the form of a new special flag. We're introducing a new universal mechanic to Sonic Riders. Holding the B button in fall state or trick state will result in the player falling faster than normal. Despite sharing the same name as the technique from the Super Smash Bros. Series, it actually works quite differently. Instead of an immediate value being applied to your character, the longer you hold the button, the more velocity you will gain. The speed and cost at which you fall is determined by the character's gear and weight. It's balanced off of a rudimentary give-and-take system. Lighter builds will consume less air when falling, but they won't be able to fall as fast, while heavier builds will consume more and fall faster. The base fast-falling velocity is the same for every character, however you'll find that heavy characters will fall much faster than the lighter characters, because their base weight is accounted for in the equation. In other words, light builds will be able to use fast fall more often, but it won't be as impactful. Whereas with heavier builds, it's exactly the other way around. This mechanic obviously entails many sweeping changes for riders. Because you can now control the time frame at which you spend on tricks, free falls, or inactionable sections, the game is generally faster with a higher potential APM. However, using fast fall isn't always so cut and dry. The player must be willing to spend resources that may be useful later on in the race, given the build, stage, matchup, and current situation. This all culminates in putting more agency in the hands of the player, as they can better dictate the pace at which they are able to play the game. For instance, not every player, especially at lower levels, is capable of edging out every inch of their access air by abusing the high execution techniques, such as JCBCs. But with this alternate, less input-intensive method to spend that extra air, we lend the lower skill levels a more attainable method of player expression. It successfully caters to the duality of lowering the skill floor for competition while maintaining and even raising its ceiling. All skill levels will use this technique. Why? because at lower levels, it's an alternative to performing 4 inputs within an incredibly small frame window, and at high level, to refine routing and shave that time. Though, even with all that, I'd say that the change to the game Fastfall brings is most apparent regarding player interaction. The combat applications are tremendous. As stated before, you're in far more control over your character, especially in areas of the game where you previously had little or none. Observe the example here. While pressured by the attacker, the lead player performs what initially looks like a standard defensive jump. But you can quickly see that by fast falling, you're able to land a couple of frames sooner, throwing the opponent's timing off guard, successfully turning the tables, and winning the interaction. This is all about granting the player options and control over those options. By putting more control in the hands of the player, we facilitate a game that is more choice-oriented, option-rich, and higher skill ceiling. Suffice to say, with the addition of weight, S-ranks, and fast falling, we've created a new Sonic Riders, one that is far more kinetic than ever before. Some of our testers have even gone so far as to say that these 3 mechanics play off of each other so intelligently that they couldn't imagine ever going back to a version of the game without them. Okay, maybe that was a little bit dramatic, but it gave me goosebumps when I heard it, so I had to put it in the script. Anyway, let's move on.
Rolling Stone.
There's a lot to cover here. In Tournament Edition, you can activate the Clutch mode by holding Z or toggling it with Y. While Clutch is active, you have the ability to go through turbulence, pits, and now tornadoes. Regardless of level, the same air is drained when going through any thick gust of wind. Once a successful pass occurs, you are invincible to tornadoes for 30 frames. This nullifies most degenerate strategies involving them, such as, but certainly not limited to, setting down a tornado in the way of a pit, type shortcut, over an item box, or most egregiously, putting down an entire wall of them before a QTE. This allows NATOs to retain their defensive power while giving the player behind the option to spend air in exchange for the hit stun they would have taken. However, the rabbit hole goes further. Generally, air drain is the same, but how much is dependent upon the type of gear. Most standard extreme gear, whether they run on rings or air, lose the exact same amount, but nearly all of the high boosting archetype will possess a new special flag. The flag allows them to retain boost duration while muscling through the tornado, in exchange for the air cost being 40% more. If they aren't boosting, then the cost is normal, just like the standard. This helps a gear like High Booster, which has historically been oppressed by defensive play. Risk is synonymous with high maintenance gears, but the High Booster has a tendency of trouble taking the lead, or losing the race outright from a single well-timed tornado. One that not only stopped you in your tracks, but effectively siphoned your resources. The ride-or-die nature of these gears will still be preserved, but with this newly acquired offensive option, we can hopefully open up the possibility for gears like High Booster to make bigger and badder plays. A new technique that is probably the counterpart to going through NATOs. You are now granted a speed boost by skimming past one. It should be stressed that you must be extremely close to the hitbox in order for it to successfully trigger. It's very easy to know you've done one successfully due to the accompanied visual and audio effects. This mechanic is nullified when clutch mode is active. This gives the player the ability to avoid accidentally slingshotting, while simultaneously forcing the player to risk getting hit by the tornado if they wish to utilize the tech in the first place. We accomplish a couple of things by turning the slingshot into a high-risk, medium-reward mechanic. One important aspect we wanted to ensure was nailed on the head is that generally all slingshots will be intentional, as only those willing to take their extreme gear skills to the next level will set themselves apart from the rest. Segueing into more clutch mode changes, there's now stark differences between the turbulence drop using clutch mode and the normal turbulence exit. We'll call this the LR exit. For starters, the LR exit has been buffed in a number of ways. After performed, the user will gain 30 frames of invincibility. Timed well, you can freely slingshot tornadoes without the need to space for them. It also gives you the Recipro Extend, allowing you to forego jump charge before a ramp. The main downside of this method is that it's a huge commitment. If performed, you won't be able to re-enter turbulence altogether for 3 seconds. Clutch mode drop, or CMD for short, will cost you a slight bit of air for using. On the flip side, you'll have the option to re-enter turbulence with no delay. And like before, you'll drop right through the turbulence from wherever you are within it, as opposed to the former which forcefully shoots you out of one side. So to recap, we gave the LR exit unique utility as the air-saving method for leaving turbulence, while CMD is a less committal, more combat-oriented maneuver. With these alterations, we go from having 2 similar mechanics with one of them being obsolete, to possessing 2 distinctly unique tools that will both be used based on the situation. Let's talk aesthetics. We completely removed the fog from Ice Factory and added some to both Green Cave and Red Canyon. The results turned out rather nice, especially in the case of Red Canyon where the fog really adds to that sunset vibe. There are various quality of life stage changes and bug fixes, but the ones I'm going to point out in particular would be the Sega Illusion Fast QTE phenomena being removed, Splash Canyon's first rail's range being increased, allowing you to latch onto it more easily, and lastly, increasing the size of Sega Carnival's street lamps and cargo boxes. The new type shortcuts are big news for sure, but the one I'm going to highlight is Sega Carnival's Flypath. Not only does it allow for common access to an area of the map which had very little, it also facilitates monofly in a way no other buff can. With this one change, there are even talks that the stage could be considered for a neutral in the future. Most of the other stage changes are simply to better balance the routes, such as speeding up the loop-de-loop in Babylon Garden, the bottom path QTE in both of the caves, or placing dash panels in a no-type section where E10G would benefit. E10G as a whole is one of the biggest winners of this patch, as nearly all of the no-type routes across all of the stages were altered in some way that increases his viability. The extreme gears are the lifeblood of Sonic Riders. Without them and the unique mechanics that come with them, the game might not be what it is today. Let's tackle how 1.4 handles some of them. Hovercraft's main issue was that it would often cross into the final lap or even finish the race not fully leveled up. While granting the hovercraft even more statistical buffs that it already has might seem okay, as it should somewhat compensate for its weaknesses, in practice it doesn't really work due to the hovercraft's specific Achilles heel, the fact that it struggles to level up on most stages. Buffing the hovercraft's speed would be the equivalent of making Ganondorf hit even harder. The gear is already plenty fast, which is why we're going into a very different direction when buffing it. It'll be gaining a special flag that gives it 1.5 ring pickup, which means that every other ring picked up will technically be 2 rings. Sure, it's not an end-all be-all solution to the gear's problems, but it should definitely mitigate them. I'm personally interested to see where this change goes for the hovercraft's viability. Speed Balancer has received minor buffs to its boost speeds at all levels, but more interestingly, it has been granted a unique attribute that allows it to gain speed from bonking off walls. Reviewers often compare 2D Sonic physics to that of a pinball machine's controlled chaos, which coincidentally is also a good way to describe Riders' physics. Characters and their boards frequently rebound off of one another and the elements of the stage environment. These changes will follow in the footsteps of Speed Balancer's reputation, and ironically, it will aid in turning its unique signature handling restriction into a more fun gameplay element. The Crazy has been renamed to the Crazy Taxi, a la its original source material. The gear retains its high boosting nature as before, but with a couple of little refinements to its game. Most notably being that it doesn't lose speed while bonking against walls, and it actually gains 2 rings for every time it collides with one. This will open up the door to more intriguing strategies, possibly allowing it to function more comfortably on less ring-viable stages. We find it's also a nice callback to the original arcade game. Powerful Gear is earning an interesting buff. Unlike other characters which slow down when traveling uphill, characters that use this gear will now accelerate uphill instead. The gear also earns bonus speed up when traveling downhill as part of the weight changes discussed earlier. This is a buff that will be more situationally beneficial on some stages rather than others, but it should be an interesting gear to experiment with. as it will fiddle around with some of the attributes of your character's weight. Next up is Turbostar.
Next up is Turbostar.
Next up is Turbostar. Wait.
What's happening?
Oh, not that! Oh. We're live? Hey everyone. Some of you in the back might know me as Logic Mage. Yeah, I see you in the back. Yeah, you with your hand up. While we're here, I was thinking of pitching a brand new idea I had for Riders players, and that's a recovery program for Turbostar addiction. For those of you who aren't familiar, Turbostar is a pretty infamous gear in Tournament Edition. It seems a board that newer players can pick up and play pretty well with even if they, well, suck at collecting rings. And you know, I get it. Riders is a pretty technical game, and I can see why newer players want to take any advantage they can. That's where our recovery program comes in. With this simple patch, anytime you pick Turbostar in an online match, there's a 50-50 chance that your pick will be replaced with E-Rider when you load into the race. And since using E-Rider is fundamentally equivalent to forfeiting the game, you'll be less inclined to use Turbostar as a result. Pretty ingenious, I'd say. Test results already show an inclination to better average ring collection. Who knows, maybe with enough use you'll no longer be hard stuck at C rank. That's a lie. If you'd like to learn more about the TSA recovery program and I don't know, see an analysis of the Sonic Riders metagame and its redefinition of idealistic esport, make sure to stay tuned for a brand new video essay, What Makes Competitive Sonic Riders So Special, coming to the Riders Boulevard channel later this summer. Please ignore the fact that it says 2021. I'm editing this 6 months later, and I lost the master file. Thank you. Actually, I lied. It's just going to be the latter. Bye!
Howdy, gamers. Discord.com/Vago here. Today, I'm coming at you bringing some spicy hot gear. Super Hang-On is one of the most oddball gears in the roster for 1.3, having massive speeds at the cost of only gaining air from pit stops and air boxes. There were few things more disappointing than receiving rings from an item box rather than the all-important air. Super Hang-On has been tweaked in this patch. It can now reach level 4 just like Turbostar. However, instead of gaining additional boost speeds, Super Hang-On will always draw speed shoes from random item boxes. Speed shoes are typically difficult to play around due to their randomized nature, but combined with altercation to their appearance race and guaranteed drops under the right conditions, this simple difference should radically change how players using this gear approach many stages and allow more creative options for both conserving air while interacting with opponents. With Power Gear, we're trying something interesting this patch. This is the first gear in the game's history that will be unable to drift dash. Instead, you'll accelerate while drifting. Unlike Fastest's similar effect, you're still able to boost and attack, but its boost speeds are below average. Don't underestimate this gear for that fact alone though. The immediacy of this burst option is powerful, and in the right hands, it's a monster to play against. Those CPUs never saw it coming. Fastest is an archaic design from 1.3 that we decided could use a little tune-up. It's a gear with an interesting concept. In exchange for the best cruising stats of any gear, it's the only one in the game that prevents the user from entering boost state, and by extension, is unable to attack its opponents. Unfortunately, after release, it was found that the gear was only useful in very specific situations, such as its pairing with E10G on Sega Illusion, and saw very little usage elsewhere. With this newest patch, you are now able to enter a super cruising state by holding the B button. While in Super Cruise, you will rapidly accelerate to well over 200 speed. This cap is increased based on level, and after a full second of holding the button, you will gain Berserker effect. Late boosters and combat characters will also gain additional speed while super cruising. Well, that's all the time I have. As you know, there are many more gears coming to 1.4. Make sure to check out the patch notes for more information. And now, back to the protagonist.
Okay, back in the saddle again. The legend has been greatly altered. Though it appears the same on the surface, it is equipped with new, powerful abilities fitting its designation as the ultimate trick gear. 35 speed for every trick performed is stacked upon landing. In addition to that, charging on Legend is now useful. Obviously, you already have max jump charge, so what could this be? Well, when you charge on Legend, it increases your trick animation speed. This allows you to output even more tricks. And you know, there's something oddly invigorating about performing a 14 trick combination, landing at over 400 speed, and then boost chaining off of that. It definitely lends itself to a beautiful feeling of competence. To balance these new powerful abilities, we nerfed the boost speed a little bit. As you can tell, we're aiming to stray away from the low skill floor design that was highly effective at virtually all levels of play. This is more of a easy to pick up, difficult to master type of gear. Because despite all the new bells and whistles, it still coincides with its user-friendly design. Being able to charge and perform tricks faster will allow for less experienced players to X-rank easier, while experienced players will also want to charge instead so they can edge out as many tricks as possible for that coveted speed boost. I believe that this form of Legend is at its peak. It is now a fully realized gear, one that properly possesses the duality of welcoming newcomers, while boasting a high skill ceiling for the competitive crowd to sink their teeth into. For the large majority of Sonic Riders' competitive history, the side modes have always been relatively overlooked. Because of this, development to improve these modes always came second. As for 1.4, we're giving them a little bit more attention. In Battle Mode, CPUs are removed when playing with 2 or more players. This allows us to easily set up 1v1s, possibly making for the most simple but effective change for making this mode viable for tournaments. The first Battle Mode tournament was actually ran as a Fortnite-style Battle Royale due to this constraint. We also allowed it so that you can pick your own gears now, but they're purely cosmetic. This is just a nice touch. Tag Mode is getting some welcome quality of life changes too. Because the stages have their type shortcuts removed, E10G and Advantage P were banned in tournaments for being overpowered, as they weren't designed with Tag Mode in mind. You'll find that this was made to be visually apparent. Teams are assigned on a port basis, so it's impossible to get team members mixed up. You can also all pick the same character. This means we can finally experience the long-awaited Knuckles and Knuckles versus Knuckles and Knuckles. You're welcome, Sonic community.
Here I come, rougher than Knuckles.
You're welcome. Gameplay-wise, special flags are enabled, which means that certain gears that were previously gimped in tag mode are now less. This should allow for a much more varied meta than was seen previously. Lastly, ramps have been normalized. This is mostly just a game feel improvement, as the ramps felt awful in the original mode. We hope that with these tweaks, players will find these modes more varied and, most importantly, fun. With all that said, it's time we talk about the last major mechanic coming to SRTE. When a player is behind and has not interacted with turbulence or slipstream for a prolonged period of time, their extreme gear will activate an emergency failsafe system and begin to manifest its hidden power. This energy will visibly materialize in the form of Essence, a self-emitted pulse that follows the character. It acts as both a clock and a measurement of intensity. While under the effects of this power, the user is able to manipulate the environment around them, gaining more air and speed from the game world that would normally allow. This phenomena is known as magnetic impulse. This is the new comeback factor. Similar to turbulence, you're capable of gaining a lot of air from proper use. And, similar to Slipstream, the longer you are under the effects of magnetic impulse, the stronger it becomes. However, unlike the others, it isn't reliant on a winning opponent to produce it. It's reliant on a timer and fulfilled conditions, those being not being in first place and not having used Turbulence or Slipstream for a prolonged period of time. After these conditions are met, the gear will begin to grow in MI value. You'll start gaining more air and speed from stage devices. MI will continue to grow until it reaches a state of maximum impulse. Needless to say, the player will gain an enormous amount of air and speed from actions involving the track's facilities. This means trick ramps, dash panels, airboxes, rails, fly hoops, power objects, pits, and any other stage device that is used to gain air or speed will essentially be supercharged. MI will reach full power after 20 uninterrupted seconds. What can interrupt it? Well, crossing into first place for one, and or being under the effects of Turbulence and Slipstream again. As soon as magnetic impulse is stalled, it immediately begins a decaying process, taking 15 seconds to decay from max intensity back down to 0. MI will reignite once the timer for Turbulence and Slipstream have been reached once again. When that happens, the intensity of MI picks up where it left off. You can always tell when the effects have expired by paying attention to the color of the light and the accompanying sound. We made it very simple to understand. When it's red, it's active. When it's blue, it's not. MI was mainly developed to address a couple of the issues with previous comeback factors' effectiveness. First one being their stage-dependent nature. Take Turbulence for example. Not only do you have to be within its range, but it doesn't always form properly, or at all. And on top of that, the player ahead can sabotage it, which will result in it being less useful. Slipstream, on the other hand, requires you to be directly behind the player in order to build it. Even with it being more consistent, by design, it isn't very helpful on stages that twist and turn a bunch. The second issue would pertain to the fact that if you're grinding on a rail or flying into Narnia, the player behind isn't going to be able to use Turbulence nor Slipstream, because the leading player simply isn't producing it. Ability-granting gears in particular were the absolute worst offenders of this, as they would often spend significant portions of the track completely out of reach. Magnetic Impulse was designed to solve all of these issues simultaneously in one fell swoop. Where Turbulence and Slipstream are weak, MI is strong, and vice versa. It is essentially the missing piece to this Triforce-shaped puzzle. Rest assured, this is a mechanic that was rigorously tested, making sure it's not just a case of second place equals faster. While the player will readily gain more access to resources, it's still up to them to make any real use of it. If you're a player who is completely outmatched by their opponent, MI is not going to save you. And that philosophy leads me into my other inspiration for MI. Just look at it. The many fighting games that either fill a resource faster or make your character gain some sort of pinch ability usually never fail to give the player a sense of excitement and tension. Think the V system from Street Fighter V, or Positive Bonus from Guilty Gear Strive. They look cool, they sound nice, and they feel good. And those things are pretty important to making a video game fun. This officially concludes the gameplay section. I'm now going to pass you over to Jam.
Hi everyone, what's up? As most of you know, I'm SRT's community manager and website developer for the project. And oh boy, I have been waiting a very long time to show off sonicriders.org, our new official website. Let's get started. As soon as you open the website, you will see our mission statement alongside two experiences. The first being our page and the second being the original website. The original website is not done yet, but I plan to have a recreation of the original done by the end of 2022. The next page we will be looking at is the homepage. The homepage consists of all the amazing components of the website. I won't be going over all the pages, but I will be talking about the most important ones. The first couple of pages I want to go over are the netplay pages. If you are new to our community, these couple of pages break down how to download the game, optimal Dolphin settings, how to connect to a match, and how to host a match. There are also a few pages of tutorials on how to set up the textures on your Dolphin emulator. I am so happy to announce the release of these pages, and I am excited for you all to learn how to play. The next section I want to talk about is about the mod. In these couple of pages, everything you need to know about 1.4 is explained. This includes the gears, stages, character stats, music, mechanical changes, and most importantly, archive of all the patch notes leading up to 1.4. Working on this section was probably the biggest challenge for me, as there were a lot of intricate features on these couple of pages. They will provide a resource for you as you learn about our mod. To conclude, I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us today, and also all the community members that have worked on the project leading up to this point. There is an updated credit page on the website with everyone that has helped us throughout the project. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the direct, and I'll see you guys on the racetrack.
Wow, talk about a sick showcase. Hi guys, I'm Eldarin. I really hope you all are enjoying the direct. I sure know I am. It's an absolute honor for me to be here. I run a little YouTube channel going over the development, concept art, music, and about everything in between of the Sonic franchise and more. I'd like to give a huge thank you to the Sonic Riders Tournament Edition team for reaching out to me to not only be here, but also collaborating with me for the past couple of months on a mega project I've been working on. That, of course, I'm here to announce. 2 days from now, December 25th, aka Christmas, at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am very excited to unveil I will be dropping a huge video going over everything from the development, concept art, shady business practices, and more that went into the creation of Sonic Riders. The SRTE team was kind enough to share some very cool surprises for the video that they were able to preserve, which haven't seen the light of day in a significant amount of time, which of course I'm not going to spoil now. That being said, I have come with a small little 30-second preview for you guys to check out. This excerpt comes from discussing how the identity and style of the Riders games were formed by letting new leadership work on the project. And finally, director, main game designer, and storyboard designer Kenjiro Morimoto, who also worked on Sonic Adventure, Sonic Heroes, and actually in 2020 expressed interest on wanting to create a new Sonic Riders game, although leaving Sega in 2017. If there's any need for a title for a true Sonic Riders 3, hit me up, as I have created the ultimate names for this game. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sonic Thriders. One of the major reasons why this game had such a unique identity and style is because a lot of the familiar faces that were working on the prior games, like Takashi Iizuka, Kazuyuki Hoshino, Hiroshi Nishiyama, and even Yuji Naka, were not really assisting with this project. Speaking of Naka, although executive producer, only really provided the very loose groundwork for the Riders team, as Takashi Yuta commented on in a November 2005 Kikitsu interview. With Sonic Riders, I can't remember exactly what bits Naka gave advice for, but there definitely was some input from him in places and at the beginning. Did you like it? There's going to be more where that came from when the extreme development of Sonic Riders drops on Christmas. You can find me at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Eldarin, or on Twitter with the Eldarin_ handle. Lastly, I just really want to say congratulations and thank you to ProTag and the SRTE team for the release of 1.4 and giving me the opportunity to be here talking with you guys. It was an absolute pleasure to work with them on the Riders development video, and you can really tell that 1.4 is a true passion project from the team. They've done a phenomenal job keeping the Riders legacy alive and thriving. Anyways, that's enough from me. I'm gonna pass the mic back to ProTag and get back to playing 1.4. See you guys.
Hey guys, I'm Commander Lilac from the SRTE team. I'd like to take the opportunity to speak on what's happening with the music for 1.4. Let's start with the music results from the fan poll. The highlighted tracks are the ones that made it into the patch. We were initially surprised with just how many suggestions there were. We thank all of the community members that took the time to give us your thoughts. In fact, due to the results of the poll, the team wanted to take sound design much more seriously. So ProTag put together a music division, developing a collection of remixes for 1.4.
Unleash
Most of the picks were hand-selected to be underrated tracks from older Sonic games. Giving the community a glimpse of what these tracks would sound like with modern instrumentation could spark other passionate fans to follow suit. All the songs will be released separately as an album called SRTE Maximum Impulse for your listening pleasures. Riders, and especially the greater Sonic community, is one of the most welcoming places for a reason. The decades of fan content has granted us fans thousands of hours of entertainment and joy. That's why we want to do our part and return the favor to a home that's given us so much. The entire soundtrack will drop on January 1st on Riders Boulevard. Stay tuned! However, that's not all that's happening with Sonic Riders music. There's a brand new project we have in the works, completely separate from 1.4. Please take a look.
What's up, y'all? It's me, Dolphin Uppercut Avenger, here in the aquarium, stoked to announce my new collaboration with the Sonic Riders Tournament Edition team. We are producing a cover album of the Sonic Riders soundtrack. So follow @Dolphin Uppercut on social media, dolphinuppercut.com, and follow ProTag and the Sonic Riders Tournament Edition team. You're not going to want to miss these updates on the Sonic Riders cover album. So big thank you to ProTag for all of his hard work. Shout out to the Aquatic Squad. Stay hydrated. Keep it aquatic. Bye.
Big props to Lilac and Dolphin. Can you believe they did that all in one take? Anyway, I want to take your attention all the way back to an event we teased in June. The Elemental Hero Texture Contest. Debuting in the objective best part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, the cocky prodigy Jaden used the epic line of elemental heroes to triumph over as many obstacles. The goal for this one is simple. Create an extreme gear texture that's modeled after one of the elemental hero monster cards. Bet it sounds familiar to the previous premises of these events. Well, what's different is the scale. It's far greater than any texture contest that came before it. This time around there'll be 10 winners, each claiming a prize of $20 each. That already comes out to $200. But it doesn't end there. The 10 winners will then be qualified to enter in a final round where this time, they will create another texture, instead being an elemental hero inspired character texture. In this round, only one submitter will be victorious. They will be officially crowned as the ultimate texture artist, and will take home an additional $100 as their spoils. Yeah, you heard that correctly. The prize pool for this texture contest totals out at $300. Believe it! There's a lot of glory in this one. So what exactly are you waiting for? It's time to get your game on! In January! And hey, speaking of prize money...
There's still a few more things to announce. Get ready for one of tonight's biggest. An all-new tournament series in commemoration of 1.4's launch. This is called the World Grand Prix Circuit. Not only set to be the game's biggest, but also perhaps its first introduction into major esports. Over the course of this next year, there'll be a series of 8 qualifier events. Once these have all concluded, there'll be a final event where the winners of these 8 qualifiers will come together in a final competition to decide who's the greatest on Extreme Gear. This tournament in particular will be entirely crowdfunded by members of the community. So please, allow me to make the first contribution.
And just like that, we draw towards the end. The end of the very first Sonic Riders Direct. I'd like to take this moment to thank our entire community, past and present. Riders is a game that lives and dies by the people who play it. And the Sonic Riders competitive Discord attracts such a wide variety of people that I'd never be able to meet otherwise. We're large, yet tightly knit in a way that I've never seen another game replicate. So again, thank you all for making the Riders scene what it is today. Here's to the past 5 years, and many more. Oh, wait, I almost forgot. I have one more thing to show you guys. Please, take a look.
Time to show you my true power! I can hardly wait! Bring it! What a wild ride! See what happens when I try a little? Happy birthday! Say your prayers, you thieving rat! I just need to get all the rings! There's a passage here! Time to teach you the meaning of top speed! Think fast!
Getting hit will cause you to lose time!
There's still more to come! Ha!
Here we go! Transform! I'm not gonna hold back! Way too easy! A fine work indeed!
Must be my day. I'll show you the true power of Chaos Control! I told you, I'm the ultimate. Here we go! I warned you, didn't I? You'll never defeat us!